Today's confirmation hearing of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is more than just a moment in history. It's a moment for little black girls to look up at their TV screens and see this extremely qualified black woman with glasses, rocking locks, and see themselves. The hearing comes just days after the House passed the Crown Act, which would ban discrimination against traditional race or ethnically based hairstyles, like Judge Jackson's locks, a hairstyle that has a long history of being deemed as unprofessional and now is being seen on the woman who will likely be our next Supreme Court justice. Joining me now is Robin Autry, chair of the sociology department at Wesleyan University. And professor, in your think piece for NBC Think, you write, the history of dreadlocks in particular communicates this legacy. The name dates to British colonists' distaste for the matted hair of Kenyan warriors, which they described as nasty and dreadful. That origin explains why some prefer the word locks over dreadlocks. And I love this because my mother, for many years, maybe like 20 years, has had locks, and she would always correct people who came up to her and used the term dreadlocks. I mean, specifically talk about her choice of locks and why it's important to use the right term.
Right. I have the same experience with my sister who had locks for many years and was very adamant about calling them locks rather than dreads or dreadlocks. So yeah, dreadlocks have this long history of being stigmatized, of being treated as somehow unclean, dirty in some way. So yes, this is a revolutionary moment in that sense, but Jackson's locks in particular are a style called sister locks, which were created by Joanne Cornwell. And it's a different technique that's used to create them. It has a similar appearance that we might be used to from more traditional sorts of dreadlocks, but it is a particular technique and a particular style. And one thing that stands out about this style to me is that as far as natural hairstyles go, it's kind of expensive in terms of how to get it started and then how to maintain it. And there aren't as many people that are trained in starting this style and maintaining it, helping you to maintain it. So it's a little bit different than other types of dreadlocks and other natural hairstyles too.
It's so true. And I right now, my mother has sister locks. And so when I see Judge Jackson, I see my own mother reflected back at me. Does Judge Jackson's hair help normalize natural hairstyles in corporate and workplace settings, which is a huge deal? I mean, we just had the Crown Act pass. It seems like this needs to be, like, stop asking me about my hair, how it grows up my head, and how I choose to wear it, please.
Definitely. I think that a lot of us, the way you started this segment, thinking about like young Black girls and women watching these hearings and looking at the nomination that happened earlier and being able to see themselves in her, like that's pretty transformative in and of itself, to be able to see yourself in someone in this sort of position, or be able to see your sister or your mother in that position. So yes, I do think that this sort of moment goes a long way to normalize a look, to say, look, don't be surprised when you see me at the department meeting or the board meeting or showing up for an interview, that this isn't really a topic of conversation, let alone a point of contention in terms of whether I'll be hired or whether I'll be promoted. I think this is a critical moment, a critical statement in that regard.
It's so true, because in the law in particular, I remember learning a specific rule. When you go for a job interview, you have to wear a blue suit or a black suit, and you should have your hair up in a very neat style. I mean, this is directions literally that I got, and it wasn't like I graduated a long time ago. This is a really important thing. There's also a long-standing tradition of judges appearing a very particular way: black robes, dress shoes, collars. I mean, what does this moment mean for young women and girls of color who rock their natural hair, that they can see somebody really being their true authentic self, even as they, I mean, the fact that she was wearing cobalt today, which I see that you're also wearing, you know, that also stood out to me as something that was important as well.
Yeah, it is important. And that image just says so much, that we have in our minds what a judge wears and what they look like. What we don't take into consideration is sometimes that's racialized and that's gendered, that it's not just the black robe and the gavel, that oftentimes people will imagine someone white, or they'll imagine a man, or they'll imagine an older white man or something. So it's really pivotal that other bodies occupy that space. That doesn't mean that the robe is gone, but some of that other baggage that goes along with that imagery that's highly racialized, that's highly gendered, those things get called into question.
I mean, in the ideal world, I wish we didn't have to talk about this, even though I love talking about natural hair. I wish we didn't have to say, like, we're normalizing the way your hair grows out of your head naturally. Like, why do we need to normalize the way my hair grows? That's silly. But do you think we're actually going to get to a point through progress like this where women could just wear their hair how they want and nobody says anything?
I do think we're moving toward that, especially with the Crown Act and that legislation, that first there has to be some acknowledgement that there is an issue, that there has been an issue, that racism isn't just about your skin tone, that it's also about texturism, the texture of your hair, the style of your hair, your facial features. We have to have this more complex, nuanced understanding of racism before we can get to that place where we don't have to have these conversations like what we're having today.
Professor Robin Autry, I appreciate the nuance and expertise you brought to this conversation. It's so cool to see this, and I'm so glad to have you on this historic day. Thank you for being here. Hi, I'm Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more from Zerlina by clicking any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thanks for watching.